You guys may know Chip well enough to know that he's an avid year-round water skier. That's a big deal when you live in Seattle, right? That means there's 9 months of cold and drizzle. So he gets out there under less than ideal circumstances. And I want to say thanks to Paul. That was a terrific, a fun hour of sort of random coolness. It's fun to follow both of those, and I'm going to try in 10 minutes to see if we can't do three things. I want to give you a quick conceptual. Let me see if, there we go. I'm going to try to do three things in about 10 minutes. Give you a quick conceptual look at why I think the pivot to personal digital learning is a really big deal. Like one of the 3 or 4 most important things happening in the world. Secondly, I'm going to talk about how that's going to happen in most of your schools. And then 3, I'll talk briefly about Digital Learning Now, a policy framework introduced last December with some interesting recommendations. So really briefly, my sort of take on what Hall just described and what Chip just discussed is this historic pivot in the way we do school. It's easy to think about the stuff that we talked about, the tools and the sort of 21st century leadership things as sort of discrete elements of reform. But in the broad sweep of history, we're going to live through, in this decade, one of the most profound transitions in human history. In the last couple of years, we went through this threshold where if you have access to broadband, you can learn almost anything, anywhere. Almost anyone can learn almost anything, anywhere for free or cheap. That is a dramatic change in being human on this planet. I mean, it's connected more than 1 billion of us to the knowledge on the planet. That's a profound shift. So what Chip described, not a reform, but a phase shift. And the reason this is inevitable, that it is happening, whether you like it or not, whether you're participating or not, whether you're leading or not, is because your system is being enveloped in this informal web of learning, right? All of your kids have access to a great algebra teacher today. His name is Saul Kahn. Right? So regardless of what's happening in your schools, kids are able to learn at home, and some are, and some are not. So it's this new reality that we're living through, and we all have a choice about how we want to shape it. When I think about the from to, here's a couple of descriptions, and you guys know this stuff, but it is a big deal. It's a shift from print to digital. It's a shift from the age cohort Bismarckian school model that we've had for 150 years to teaching kids, not groups. Not just personalized learning, but customized learning. Right? And shifting from a teacher in a classroom with a group of kids to teams that work together with rich data sets to promote student learning. In short, it's the first chance that we really had to change the learning curve, to help more kids learn more, faster, and cheaper. So I just finished a book which was a torturous process, and I had an editor that beat the out of me until we finally boiled down. She kept saying, what is this shift to personal digital learning about? And she finally helped me clarify these 3 benefits that Getting Smart focuses on. It's customization, motivation, and equalization. Here's how I encapsulate why I think this is a big deal. Customized learning compared to the teaching a group of age cohorts. The teaching a kid at the right level, leveraging their interests, and teaching them in the best possible modality will mean that kids will learn more per hour. So more learning per hour. John Danner said, the CEO of Rocket Ship Education, the best elementary schools in California, an early blended model said he thinks the difference is 10x between a traditional lesson taught to the sort of middle of an age cohort compared to a lesson at the right level at the right time in the right learning modality. Maybe it's not 10x, but it's 2 or 3x. It's a substantial difference if we can get more learning time at the right level and in the best possible learning modality. So that's why I think customized learning is a big deal. Second, there's a lot we can learn from casual games to set the hook and to drag kids through difficult work. Persistence. Casual gamers know a lot about building persistence. They're magicians at calibration. Calibration just means getting the level of difficulty just right. We used to call it zone of proximal development, but it's teaching at exactly the right level. Just challenging enough that it'll keep you motivated, not too difficult that you quit. I'm convinced that leveraging interests and getting smart about motivational profiles is going to help extend learning time. It will help create a longer day. A customized playlist will help extend the day and extend the year. And then finally, equalization means creating a technology platform that creates 24/7, 365 access for every kid. Some kids have that today. Our challenge in the next 3 years is to create that for every student. Chip talked about some strategies for doing it. The key is building a plan with your district and your state on how you're going to do it. I think there's lots of dimensions of customization. I listed 10 in a recent blog. I want to talk about how this is going to happen in your school, and I call it blended learning. Some people will call it hybrid learning. But blended learning is different than ed tech. We've been doing ed tech for 20 years, and Chip and I have been leaders in Washington, and we did one-to-one schools. I started the first K-12 online school in the country. That stuff hasn't made as much of a difference as it should. Why is it different now? It's different. I think blended learning is different than just adding technology to the way we've always done school in two ways. The first is that it's an intentional shift in the learning environment to an online or computer-based environment for at least a portion of the day to improve student learning. So there's an intentional shift in the modality of learning to boost student learning. And secondly, that shift is made to improve school productivity, staffing and or facilities productivity. That means more learning, less money. So when I think of blended learning, particularly in K-12 environment, I think about it in those two terms. Are kids learning more, and are we creating more sustainable schools? So in short, it's not blended learning in my definition if you're not changing your staffing model. So that's where it gets difficult, right? That's where this gets tough, because you're talking about differentiated staffing. That means different levels. And distributed teaching, that means some teachers teaching remotely. So if you're going to staff your school in a different way, that means a tough set of conversations at your next bargain. So that may mean a phased approach, but it means a different staffing model that costs less and works better. The best way to get up to speed on this is to read the InnoSight Rise of Blended Learning. A lot of you have probably taken a look at that. The full report came out 2 months ago. It describes about 40 models in a lot of detail. You can just Google the Rise of Blended Learning or just look at innosightinstitute.org, and it gives you a great description of all those models. And in Q&A, we're happy to go into more detail about that. Let me close with the policy implications. Digital Learning Now started a year ago in a conversation with former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, who was a great education governor and has gotten even smarter about learning and learning technology since he left office.